There are moments in life when everything feels shattered, when your strength fades, your voice trembles, and even hope seems distant. If you've ever felt broken, lost, or on the edge of giving up, then this message is for you. Today is not about pretending to be strong. It's about finding strength in your most vulnerable state. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is pause and listen to a prayer that reminds you who you truly are. Pain is not the end. It's a signal. It arrives when invited, often at the worst possible moments, disrupting the rhythm of your life and forcing you to confront emotions you would rather avoid. It doesn't ask for permission, and it doesn't follow rules. It can be loud and overwhelming or quiet and suffocating. But no matter how it shows up, pain always carries a message. It is not random and it is not meaningless. It is your inner world trying to get your attention in a way you cannot ignore. Too often, people treat pain like an enemy, something to silence, suppress, or escape. They distract themselves, numb themselves, or pretend everything is fine. But pain does not disappear just because it is ignored. It lingers beneath the surface, and growing stronger, waiting for the moment it can no longer be contained. What you resist does not dissolve, it deepens. And the longer you run from pain, the louder it becomes. So no high tanto, until eventually it demands to be heard. Pain is a signal that something within you needs care. It might be a wound from the past that was never healed, a truth you have been avoiding. So no high tanto no, or a part of yourself that has been neglected for too long. It could be the result of giving too much of yourself to others and forgetting to nurture your own soul. It might be the weight of expectations, the pressure to be perfect, or the exhaustion of trying to hold everything together when you are falling apart inside. Pain points to the places where something is out of balance. When you begin to see pain as a signal instead of a punishment, everything changes. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? That shift alone transforms pain from something destructive into something meaningful. It becomes a guide instead of a barrier. It becomes a teacher instead of a tormentor. Pain reveals truth. It strips away illusions and forces you to see things as they really are. It exposes relationships that drain you, habits that harm you, and beliefs that limit you. Say no high tanto no shows you where you have been settling for less than you deserve and where you have been living out of alignment with who you truly are. It does not lie, it does not sugarcoat. It tells you exactly what needs to change, even if that truth is uncomfortable. There is a reason why moments of pain often lead to the most profound transformations. When everything feels fine, there is little motivation to change. Comfort keeps you still, but pain disrupts that comfort. It pushes you out of familiar patterns and forces you to grow. It challenges you to rethink your choices, your direction, and your purpose. It demands as evolution. Pain is also a signal of your capacity to feel it deeply. It is proof that you are alive, that you care, that you are capable of connection and meaning. The same depth that allows you to experience pain is the same depth that allows you to experience love, joy, and purpose. If you shut down your pain completely, you also shut down your ability to feel anything else fully. Numbness may protect you temporarily, but it comes at a cost. Listening to pain requires courage. It means sitting with discomfort instead of running from it. It means allowing yourself to feel what you have been trying to avoid. It means facing memories, emotions, and truths that may be difficult to accept. But in that space of honesty, something powerful begins to happen. You start to understand yourself on a deeper level. You begin to reconnect with parts of yourself that you may have lost along the way. Pain often points to unmet needs. It asks you to pay attention to what you have been lacking, whether it is rest, love, respect, or boundaries, or purpose. It reminds you that you cannot continue pouring from an empty cup. So no high tanto, It calls you back to yourself, urging you to take responsibility for your own well-being. Not in a way that blames you, but in a way that empowers you. There is also a transformative aspect to pain that many people overlook. It has the ability to break you open. And while that may sound frightening, being broken open is not the same as being destroyed. When something breaks open, it creates space. Space for new understanding, new growth, and new possibilities. Se no hay tanto, that allows light to enter places that were once closed off. Pain slows you down. In a world that constantly pushes you to move faster, achieve more, and do better, pain forces you to pause. It interrupts the noise and demands stillness. And in that stillness, you have the opportunity to reflect, to realign, and to reconnect with what truly matters. It gives you a chance to reset, even if it doesn't feel that way at first. Sometimes pain is a signal that you have outgrown a version of your life. So no high tanto, It may be telling you that where you are is no longer where you are meant to be, that the path you are on no longer aligns with your purpose, that the person you once were is not the person you are becoming. Growth is not always comfortable. In fact, it often comes with discomfort, uncertainty, and fear. But that discomfort is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that something within you is evolving. Pain can also deepen your empathy. When you have experienced a struggle, sino hai tanto, you develop a greater understanding of what others are going through. You become more compassionate, more patient, and more willing to support others in their moments of difficulty. Your pain, when processed and understood, can become a source of strength, not only for yourself, but for those around you. Ignoring pain does not make you strong. Facing it does. Serran's strength is not about pretending everything is okay. It is about acknowledging when it is not and choosing to do something about it. It is about being honest with yourself, even when that honesty is uncomfortable. It is about taking small steps toward healing, even when the path ahead is unclear. Pain teaches resilience. It shows you that you can endure more than you thought possible. It reveals an inner strength that you may not have known you had. Every time you move through pain, you build a deeper sense of confidence in your ability to handle life's challenges. You begin to trust yourself more. It is important to understand that not all pain is meant to be held on to. Some pain is meant to be released. The signal is not just about recognizing the hurt, but also about knowing when it is time to let go. Holding on to pain beyond its purpose can keep you stuck. But listening to it, learning from it, and then releasing it allows you to move forward with greater clarity and freedom. Pain also challenges your perspective. Say no hai tanto, It forces you to question the stories you tell yourself. Are you seeing yourself as a victim of your circumstances, or are you willing to see yourself as someone who can grow through them? The meaning you assign to your pain shapes how you experience it. When you see it as a signal, you open the door to growth. When you see it as the end, you close that door. There is a quiet wisdom in pain. It does not shout instructions or provide easy answers, but it nudges you in the right direction. It encourages you to pay attention, to be present, and to listen more closely to your inner voice. That voice often knows what you need long before your mind is willing to accept it. Pain is not something to be rushed through. Healing takes time. Understanding takes time. Growth takes time. Allow yourself that time. Give yourself permission to feel, to process, and to heal at your own pace. Then no, there is no timeline that you need to follow, no standard you need to meet. Your journey is your own. Even in its intensity, pain carries the potential for transformation. So no hai tanto, it can break patterns, shift perspectives, and lead you to a deeper understanding of yourself and your life. It can push you toward change that you may have been avoiding. It can guide you toward a more authentic and meaningful way of living. The signal of pain is not meant to harm you. It is meant to guide you. It is a call to awareness, a call to growth, and a call to healing. It is an invitation to look within, to understand yourself more deeply, and to make choices that align with your true self. It may not feel like an invitation, but that is exactly what it is. Every time you experience pain, you are being given an opportunity to listen, to learn, and to grow, an opportunity to become more aware, more compassionate, and more aligned with who you are meant to be. An opportunity to transform something difficult into something meaningful. Sure. And while the journey through pain is not easy, it is one of the most powerful journeys you can take, because on the other side of understanding that pain is not the end, but a signal. You begin to see that even in your most broken moments, there is something within you that is still guiding you forward, still calling you to rise. Say no hai tanto, no. Still remind you that there is more to your story than what you are feeling right now. Brokenness can be a beginning in ways most people never understand until life forces them to stop pretending otherwise. Say no hai tanto, no. There is a moment when everything you thought was stable begins to shake, when the identity you carefully built starts to collapse, when the expectations you carried no longer hold their weight, and in that collapse, something unexpected begins to form beneath the ruins. It does not feel like a beginning at first. It feels like loss. It feels like confusion. It feels like standing in the middle of something that once made sense but now refuses to cooperate with your understanding of it. But beginnings are not always dressed in comfort. Sometimes they arrive disguised as endings, so you don't recognize them and run away from the process that is meant to reshape you. People often assume brokenness is the opposite of progress. There are forms of growth that only exist in the aftermath of breaking. When everything is intact, you operate within the limits of your structure, you repeat patterns, you rely on what you already know. You build your identity around what has worked before. But when that structure breaks, something shifts. The certainty you depended on is no longer available, and in that space of uncertainty, new awareness begins to emerge. You start to notice things you ignored before. You start to feel emotions you suppressed. You start to question beliefs you once held without hesitation. Brokenness removes the illusion of control. It shows you that much of what you thought had mastered was only stable under specific conditions. When those conditions change, So does everything you assumed about yourself and your life. That realization can be unsettling, but it is also where transformation begins. Because growth does not come from reinforcing what is already rigid, it comes from allowing yourself to be reshaped. There is a strange clarity that appears in broken moments. So I know high stand but not because everything becomes easier, but because everything becomes honest. The masks you wear lose their effectiveness. The roles you play lose their weight. The distractions you rely on lose their ability to numb what is happening inside you. And in that stripped down state, you are left with something raw, something real, something unfiltered. That is where beginning becomes possible. Brokenness forces you into awareness. It demands that you confront yourself without the comfort of avoidance. You begin to see the patterns that led you here, the choices that accumulated quietly over time, the compromises you made without noticing their cost, the boundaries you ignored until they no longer existed. And while that awareness can be painful, it is also the first step toward rebuilding differently. No. What most people fail to recognize is that beginnings rarely announce themselves with certainty. They often feel like disorientation. When you are broken, you are no longer standing on familiar ground. The map you used before no longer applies. The direction you once followed no longer feels relevant. You are in unfamiliar territory, and that unfamiliarity creates fear. But fear does not always indicate danger. Sometimes it indicates transition. In brokenness, identity becomes fluid. The version of you that was defined by achievement, validation, or external structure begins to dissolve. And while that dissolution can feel like loss of self, it is actually the removal of limitations that were mistaken for identity. What remains is not emptiness but potential, a space that has not yet been defined, a space that is waiting for something more authentic to emerge. Beginnings born from brokenness are not immediate. They require time in the in-between. No, that uncomfortable space where you are no longer who you were, but not yet who you are becoming. It is a space that many people try to escape from too quickly. They rush to rebuild the old structure because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. But rebuilding too soon often means reconstructing the same patterns that led to collapse in the first place. There is wisdom in staying with the brokenness long enough to understand it. Not to glorify it, not to romanticize it, but to listen to what it is revealing. Because brokenness speaks in a language that clarity does not. It speaks through discomfort, through stillness, through emotional exposure. It reveals what was hidden beneath stability. And if you are willing to stay present with it, you begin to notice that something new is forming beneath the surface. Every breakdown contains information. It tells you where your foundation was weak. It shows you where you depended on things that could not sustain you. It exposes where you ignored your own needs in order to meet external expectations. And in that exposure, there is opportunity, not the kind of opportunity that feels exciting at first, but the kind that becomes meaningful over time. Brokenness also reorders priorities. What once felt urgent loses its importance. What once felt essential becomes unnecessary. You begin to see life differently. You begin to value presence over performance, and truth over appearance, depth over approval. The hierarchy of your concerns shifts, not because you decided to change it intellectually, but because experience forced a reevaluation. There is a humility that comes with being broken. It removes the illusion that you are invulnerable. It dismantles the belief that you can control every outcome. It teaches you that strength is not about resisting collapse, but about learning how to rebuild with awareness. That humility becomes the foundation for a different kind of strength, one that is not dependent on perfection, but on adaptability. In brokenness, you also rediscover parts of yourself that were previously inaccessible, parts that were buried under expectations, responsibilities, and roles, parts that were silenced because they did not fit the version of you that you were trying to maintain. When the structure collapses, those parts begin to surface again. Not all at once, but gradually as you create space for them to exist. There is often resistance to this process because it requires letting go of identity attachments. You are not only letting go of what hurt you, but also what defined you. I know I stand to know, and that can feel like losing yourself. But what is actually happening is the shedding of versions of you that were never fully aligned with your deeper truth. The discomfort comes from transition, not destruction. Brokenness teaches patience in a way that comfort never can. It forces you to move at the pace of healing rather than the pace of ambition. It removes shortcuts. It removes illusions of quick resolution. It places you in a process that cannot be rushed, only experienced. And in that experience, you begin to develop resilience that is not superficial, but deeply rooted. There's also a quiet rebuilding that begins in brokenness, even when you do not notice it. Small shifts in perspective, subtle changes in reaction. Moments of awareness that accumulate over time. You do not wake up one day fully transformed. You wake up gradually less attached to what collapsed and more open to what is forming. The beginning that emerges from brokenness is not a return to what was lost. It is the creation of something that did not exist before. Something shaped by experience, by awareness, by truth that could not have been accessed without the breaking. It is not restoration, it is transformation. And even though the process feels uncertain, there is movement within it. A slow reorientation towards something more aligned, more honest, more grounded. It does not always feel like progress. See, no high standard, because progress in brokenness is often invisible while it is happening. It is only recognized later when you look back and realize you are no longer where you were. Brokenness strips away unnecessary complexity. It simplifies life in ways that can be uncomfortable but clarifying. You begin to see what actually matters because everything else becomes less relevant. The noise fades, the distractions lose their grip, and what remains is the core of what you are dealing with internally. There is a kind of truth that only emerges when everything else has been removed. So no high stanto, no. A truth about who you are without the structures you relied on. A truth about what you need without the influence of external validation. A truth about what remains when everything superficial has fallen away. And in that truth, beginnings are already forming quietly, even if they are not yet fully visible. So I know high stanto, even if they are still fragile, even if they are still developing in ways that are not yet understandable, and within that space where nothing feels certain but everything feels exposed, something starts to take shape that was never accessible before the breaking, something that exists beneath what was lost and continues unfolding beyond what was known before.